One of the things about having a YouTube channel and coming onto that channel to talk about your opinions is that people who disagree with you sometimes feel the need to insult you personally, just because they don't necessarily agree with your opinions, which is slightly odd, but there you go, it's part and parcel of it. One of the insults I get banded my way quite often is the word gammon. And maybe you're right, maybe I am one of those people who wanders around telling you the world's gone mad, that political correctness is crazy, and that everything is just woke nonsense. However, sometimes I read a headline or see a news story, and I think, well, even surely the most moderate liberal person, the type of person who would come out and call me a gammon, would agree that this is just unnecessary changes and that actually this is indeed woke nonsense. Woke exam chiefs ban problematic words, including immigration and homosexuality, from papers, as they tell history teachers not to use the word medieval. Woke exam chiefs have removed problematic words such as immigration and homosexuality from papers and advise history teachers to avoid the term medieval. So the three words so far that we've discovered they want banned from papers, and they probably want banned from the syllabus altogether, are the words immigration, homosexuality and medieval. Now, as far as I'm aware, none of these words are colloquialisms, none of these words are slang, and none of these words, if taken in isolation, are indeed insulting. They only become insulting if you use them in an insulting context or in a problematic context. Immigration is merely the movement of people from one place to another, typically from one country to another. Homosexuality just describes someone who is attracted to members of the same sex, and medieval refers to, historically, a specific period in time. What are we indeed supposed to replace these words with? Well, I thought I'd read on to find out. Exam boards across the UK have stripped out what they consider to be outdated terminology and decolonising syllabuses to make them more inclusive. Now, again, these are descriptive words, so I don't believe that they are outdated terminology, but my biggest concern lays in the sentence after that: decolonising syllabuses. Basically altering the way we are teaching history, maybe even taking away some of the context, some of the facts, in order to sanitise this and sanitise what we're teaching to history pupils. Sorry to interrupt the video very, very quickly. If you're not already subscribed, please just hit that subscribe button. It's completely free. There'll be no hard feelings if you change your mind at a later date. At the moment, only 5% of people who watch my videos regularly are actually subscribed. So let's change that around a little bit. Hit that button and it'd be greatly appreciated. It helps me more than you know. There'll also be a link in the description down there if you want to buy us a beer. But for now, back to the video. Now, these initially at least seem to be small changes. However, how many small changes did it take before we start to whitewash history, before we start to remove bits of history that are indeed problematic, and when we start to discount certain things that happened in the past because we fear it's not within modern context to teach them? One of England's biggest boards, Edexcel, has branded a series of words including immigration, slave, native Indian and gypsy as problematic. So again, I ask, what do they propose that we replace these particular words with? Its sanitised GCSE history syllabus, which covers early Elizabethan England, the USA and Nazi Germany, among other topics, replaces slave with enslaved people and native Indians with indigenous people. Now, native Indians is far more specific than indigenous people. Every country has indigenous people. So if we're talking about the indigenous people of India, or if we're talking about Native American Indians, then that is more specific, and certainly when it comes to a teaching context is more sensible because it removes any chance of misunderstanding. And with regards to the changing of slaves to enslaved people, now if I was a slave in any period of history, how 21st century woke teachers decide to refer to me would probably be the least of my worries. Meanwhile, mentions of gypsies has been changed to Roma or Sinti, which is quite important to realise that doesn't actually cover all gypsies, and Jews has been altered to Jewish people. They mentioned in the previous paragraph that the current GCSE history syllabus includes Nazi Germany. Now, you can't talk about Nazi Germany, unfortunately, without referring to the horrors of the Second World War and the horrors of the Holocaust, in which 6 million Jews were needlessly slaughtered. So in this instance, it is absolutely fine, as I believe it should be, to teach about the needless slaughter of 6 million innocent Jewish people because of an ideology, but we have to refer to them as Jewish people rather than Jews because that would be deemed offensive. Now, even at this point, if you're still calling me a gammon and telling me that this isn't woke nonsense and these are necessary changes, then dare I say that I think you're kind of beyond hope at this point. I mean, you might say, well, Phil, this is just small changes. This is just minor changes to the way we teach history. However, how many small changes to the syllabus, including the changes in language, does it take before we start removing or whitewashing entire periods of history because they're unpalatable for those people who are learning about them? And because sometimes in history things have happened which don't align with the way that we see things, or we're programmed to see things, or we're expected to see things in the 21st century. Now, this is something I spoke about earlier. It also replaces immigrant with migration and migrant, even though they are generally understood to be two different things. And that was exactly my understanding. Birds migrate. Birds migrate south from the Northern Hemisphere in the winter and then come back in the summer. And that's migration. They go and then they come back. Immigration is where you at least plan to move permanently from one place, typically one country, to another. In this instance, we are actually altering the meaning of words. We are teaching using the incorrect terminology just to avoid using the word immigrant or immigration, neither of which, in the correct context, are remotely problematic. Like most of these proposed banned words, these words only actually become problematic when they're prefixed with something that is inappropriate. Examiners have also erased references to tensions caused by immigration to the UK. Now, obviously, immigration in the UK, as of 2024, is probably overarchingly the biggest topic and the biggest area of public concern. So we're now talking about removing the teaching of other periods of mass immigration to the UK so that we can maintain the political consensus that we are teaching our children about the current wave of immigration. Someone far smarter than me said, and I'm bound to butcher this quote, that if we don't teach history, history will repeat itself. Now, that isn't a comment on immigration. However, the active removal from the syllabus talking about other periods of immigration to the UK and the tensions and the problems caused by that is surely a way of whitewashing the problems that we may now be facing in 2024. Meanwhile, the word homosexuality has now been deemed inappropriate. It has been removed from Edexcel Religious Studies GCSE and replaced with same-sex sexual relationship, to use more inclusive, up-to-date terminology which is better suited to the context in which it is used. Now, this extends beyond history now. We're talking about religious studies, and dare I say, we could also talk about English literature. Homosexuality is a common theme throughout a lot of Shakespeare and through other great literary works which pupils study at school. Now, dare I suggest that once again this woke change in terminology means that it becomes nonsensical in certain situations. The changing of homosexuality to same-sex sexual relationship just won't be relevant in some instances. What if you are a gay person but you are single? You're not in a same-sex sexual relationship. What if you are in a non-sexual relationship as a homosexual person? You're altering language to be woke, but in many instances you're taking it out of context so it doesn't make sense. If you are a single homosexual man, you are not in a same-sex sexual relationship. You are a single homosexual man. And again, unless it's prefixed with something insulting or something inappropriate, the word homosexual in and of itself is not an insulting word. It is merely descriptive terminology. There's lots of other examples that it goes on to talk about. Taking out the term Plains Indians and added Native Americans of the Plains to its GCSE history syllabus to avoid outdated terminology. Students using the old term will still be credited. Critics have accused the awarding bodies of attempting to censor language, stifle debate, and denigrate Western civilization. It just seems so pointless. Like I say, none of these terms, I believe, in isolation are insulting. It's all about context. And history has an awful lot of unpleasant, unpalatable contexts that we teach children about. And it's important that we teach history in an accurate manner. Those who don't learn history are liable to repeat it. As I said earlier, the very fact that we can teach, and we do teach, and we should, dare I say, teach, the slaughter of 6 million innocent Jews to support an evil ideology, but we have to change the word Jews to Jewish people to maintain modern sensibilities and modern sensitivities, is just absolutely ridiculous. And if you want to call me a gammon for holding that opinion, then please go right ahead. There's a comment section below to do just that. I understand that language evolves. I understand that language changes. It shouldn't denigrate the language. It shouldn't denigrate our teaching of history and of literature and of Western civilization and how our cultures have developed. It's important that we understand where we come from in an unsanitised manner, even if there are ugly parts in history. And this is not exclusive to the Western world. As the great philosopher Tom MacDonald once said, every flag is covered with a little blood. And we need to learn about this so that we don't make the same mistakes in the future. Stay safe and stay sane, everyone.